Welcome to the Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Ancient wisdom, modern life, and the way. Visit us online at taoananda.com or find us on all the socials. Now, the Modern Taoist.
All right, and welcome to episode 6 of the Modern Taoist. I'll get it right one of these days. I named it. You'd think that I'd remember what it is. The Modern Taoist. This is episode 6, and my name is Kit Man. All episodes from this point forward. We had 5 right at the beginning so that you could binge through or whatever you wanted to do. And from this point forward, all episodes will release every Tuesday morning at 5 a.m. Pacific Daylight and or Standard Time, depending on what time of year it is. That's coming up, by the way, right? That the time switch in the United States is coming up here very soon. We're at that time of the year, and we're going to take on today one of the most, I believe, misunderstood ideas in Taoism, and that is Wu-Wei. W-U-W-E-I. It's fun to say, though, Wu-Wei. It's usually translated to or as non-action, which does make it sound like Taoism is telling you to sit on the couch and never lift a finger, but that's why it's very misunderstood. I think the number 1 or 2 question on Taoist forums on the internet, you can even just look it up, what's the most confusing thing about Taoism, and a lot of times you're going to get somebody explain to me what Wu-Wei is. Wu-Wei is the art of not forcing, of moving with the river instead of swimming against it. This comes up in my own life all the time. I mean, times when I've tried to force things, projects, hobbies, revenue streams, even something as simple as getting through a to-do list. Every time I push hard, I hit a wall. When I ease up, when I let things breathe, somehow I manifest. Doors open on their own. So why this topic this week? Well, one, we're at the beginning of the podcast, and a lot of people, when they listen to a podcast like this, are looking for some origin, some foundation, some education. And you can't jump in, you can't wait until episode 35 to talk about Wu-Wei. It is the concept. But also, we live in a world that's built on forcing. Hustle, grind, make it happen. And Wu-Wei is the exact opposite of that. And I think we need a primer, a reminder even, to take a step back. So let's clear up the misunderstanding. First of all, Wu-Wei is not about laziness. It doesn't mean doing nothing. And it definitely doesn't mean giving up. Wu-Wei literally translates to non-doing. But non-doing in the translation, actually, it means non-forcing. Okay, it's about action that flows so naturally that it feels effortless. Think about it this way. Every one of us has experienced some time, whether it's at work or in a hobby or a creative process or conversation, where you're in the zone. Maybe you were writing or playing music or gardening. You weren't overthinking. You weren't second guessing. You were just there, present, and everything seemed to move on its own. That, my friends, is Wu-Wei. The Taoists noticed 3,000 years ago that nature operates in this way. Rivers don't force their way downstream to the sea. They just follow the path of least resistance. They wind around obstacles. Put a big boulder in the middle of a river, it's going to get around it somehow. Trees don't struggle to grow. They reach for the sun, and their roots dive into the soil. Clouds don't try to form into shapes. They just gather and drift and fill up with moisture and change. Wu-Wei is living in that same rhythm, not trying to bend life into your shape, but letting yourself be shaped by life. So here's the catch, though, right? Because we're taught the exact opposite. We're taught from a very, very young age to celebrate effort, to celebrate hustle, to glorify victory. Starting in elementary school, we build planners and notebooks and productivity systems. And we learn from a very, very young age to try to manage every single moment of our lives. And then when you're 30 or 35 years old, you're exhausted and burnt out or frustrated because life refuses to stay on schedule. Well, guess what? That's the lesson. You, my friend, are the rock in the river. The river doesn't give a damn that you're there. Forcing doesn't work. Don't be the rock in the river. Be the leaf on top of the river. That's a very ancient Chinese thing to say, huh? Be the leaf on top of the river. Put that on a t-shirt. Wu-Wei doesn't mean you stop acting. It doesn't mean you stop doing. It means you stop fighting the reality. My biggest trouble, my biggest issue, my number one trigger on this planet is the way other people behave. As if it's my fault, as if it's my responsibility. Especially in traffic. Oh. But if traffic is jammed, Wu-Wei isn't about honking and stressing. It's about turning up the music. Notice the clouds overhead. If you're sick, Wu-Wei isn't about pretending you're fine and pushing harder. I know people that do that. I do that myself. Less as I have gotten older and wiser. When you're sick, you need to rest. It's your body telling you that you're forcing. Rest. Let your body heal. Don't power through work if you have a headache. Take 20 minutes and wait for the headache to subside. In the big picture part of your day, 20 minutes seems at the time like, oh my God, I can't waste this 20 minutes. Oh my God. But really, yeah, you can. Sure you can. Wu-Wei is still about doing things, but it's doing things aligned with how they are, not how you demand them to be. In other words, when you get that headache, the headache simply is there. You don't get to then demand that you don't have a headache. That's not how it works. So as we start this episode, hold on to this thought. Wu-Wei is not about being passive. It's about being so deeply in tune that your actions feel natural and effective and effortless. And in a world addicted to forcing, That's rebellion, like we talked about in the last episode. That's revolutionary. Chill. Watch what's happening and get into the middle of that. So if Wu-Wei is so natural, why do we spend so much of our lives forcing? This is a concept that I've brought up before, and I'll probably bring it up a billion more times because I think it comes down to fear. Fear that if we stop pushing, everything will fall apart. Fear that if we don't hold the reins tight, we'll lose control of the horse. Because we're trained in that fear. Deadlines, bills, comparisons. They all whisper the same thing. If you ease up, you'll fall behind. But as we talked about before, in the art of not forcing, the more we force, the more stuck we get. Think about reaching down and grabbing a handful of sand in your fist. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips away. Look at relationships. Look at people that you've seen in relationships. Perhaps you have been in a relationship. How many times have you seen someone try to force love to last? They text too much. They cling too tight. They try to script out the future. Instead of deepening a connection, it just drives the other person away. Are you a creative? If you're a creative, think about this. Think about creativity. Let's say you are a painter. When you force yourself to be inspired, you end up staring at the canvas. You can't just walk in and say, today I'm going to paint a perfect picture of blank. You have to let the idea come to you. A songwriter doesn't sit down and say, today I'm going to write a song about butterflies. That's not how it works. You may say that's what you're going to do, but your song's going to be about idiot butterflies. Well, maybe the butterflies aren't idiots, but the song will be idiotic 80% of the time. Unless you're Bob Dylan, you're not going to sit down and decide, I'm writing a brilliant song about butterflies in the next 10 minutes. Because you're pushing too hard. And forcing isn't just about pushing hard. Sometimes it's about pretending. Pretending to be okay when you're not. Pretending you're in control when you're really drowning inside. That, my friends, is also forcing. That's forcing a mask. That's forcing a version of yourself that doesn't line up with reality. This fake it till you make it culture, that's forcing. Look, it's a great concept. Fake it till you make it. I know a lot of people that live by that, and they've been quite successful until they aren't. Because you're forcing a version of yourself that doesn't line up with reality. But Wu-Wei is the opposite of that. It's the courage to let things be what they be. To say, this project isn't ready yet. This person isn't mine to hold on to. This moment isn't meant to bend to my will. And that's something I've noticed in my own life. A lot of forcing, for me, comes from impatience. When you're impatient, you want to skip the process. You want the fruit without planting the seed, the answer without living the question. Wu-Wei says no shortcuts. The river bends, and you bend with it. But I want to be clear, this isn't about giving up ambition, living in a hammock all day. although that sounds fantastic. It's about choosing where you put your effort. When you're aligned, effort feels alive. When you're forcing, effort feels like, say the word with me, it starts with an E, effort. Effort feels like effort when you're forcing. The difference isn't how much energy you spend, but whether that energy is flowing with reality, flowing downstream, or trying to fight against reality and trying to flow upstream. Have you ever tried to paddle a kayak upstream in a river? You see this in your body. Push through an injury, and most of the time, unless you're a professional athlete who knows what to do, most of the time you're going to make it worse. Rest, move gently, let the healing happen, and guess what? You return quicker and stronger. The modern world tells us to always be in motion. Wake up at a certain time, get your ass moving, don't stop moving until sundown, have a little dinner, watch a little TV, but keep moving. Keep moving. Make sure you reach for your phone in the breaks. Make sure you take your phone to the bathroom with you. Make sure you move. Wu-Wei says, wait. Don't grab the sand. Don't pretend the mask fits. Don't sprint when the river is asking you to float. So far we've talked about Wu-Wei on a personal level, those moments in traffic and conversation in our own bodies, but Taoism has always looked bigger than the individual. Lao Tzu wasn't just writing advice for private meditation. He was speaking to leaders. He was speaking to communities, to entire cultures. Wu-Wei is just as relevant when we zoom out and look at the big picture. Think about leadership. Think about bosses in your workplace. One of my favorite things that I've always tried to teach people in workplaces is how to be a leader, but not a boss. Do you understand the difference? Taoist leadership is different than boss leadership. Bosses are taught to control the outcomes, to manage every detail, to drive performance. Taoist leadership sounds like the opposite. Lao Tzu says, the best leaders are those whose presence is barely known. When the work is done, the people will say we did it ourselves. That's Wu-Wei in action. Not about doing nothing. It's about creating conditions where things move more naturally without constant force from the top. When you see the differences in your workplace, a manager who micromanages every task drains the team. They force outcomes, and people will either burn out or rebel. A manager who practices Wu-Wei sets clear direction, trusts the people that he hired to do the job that he hired them to do, he or she, and steps in lightly when needed. The work flows, people feel ownership, energy circulates instead of bottlenecking. It's just a better way of doing things. Same principle applies in politics. Look at the government. When they try to control every detail of your life, you get resentful. When leaders allow space for communities to adapt and create, self-organize, you get resilient. But we live in this system obsessed. Productivity and growth and metrics and content. But nature doesn't only grow upward. It rests in the winter. It sheds leaves. It allows for cycles. Wu-Wei says balance isn't found in endless expansion. It's found in knowing when to pause. when to let the field lie, when to step back. Even in innovation, Wu-Wei has something to teach. Forcing ideas before they're ready leads to shallow solutions. When you hear the phrase Wu-Wei, you might picture someone drifting along passively like I said, like a leaf on the water. But what if we turn that image on its head? What if practicing Wu-Wei wasn't just about drifting, but about strength? About being so steady in yourself that you don't need to force anything. It's what I like to call being a Wu-Wei warrior. Now, don't get hung up on that word warrior. This isn't about aggression or fighting. A Wu-Wei warrior doesn't conquer through intimidation. The strength comes from flexibility and patience and trust in the flow of how things go. It's the kind of warrior who can step into chaos and remain calm, because they know they don't have to control every moving part. They can stop for a second, look at the situation, and contemplate the next move based on how things are flowing. Think about martial arts for a second, like Tai Chi Chuan or Aikido. Skill isn't about overpowering your opponent. It's about blending with their energy and redirecting it and staying centered. You win by not forcing. You stay grounded while everything else spins. That's the exact spirit of a Wu-Wei warrior. So, how do you implement this in your everyday life? Not with a sword, but with choices. Let me give you some experiments for stepping into the role of a Wu-Wei warrior. You're stuck in a long line at the grocery store. The Wu-Wei warrior doesn't tighten up and curse the delay and get frustrated and why don't they have more checkers? They use that moment as training. A place to breathe, to soften, to smile, and the patience to grow strong. I've done this before. When everyone else is griping and complaining about why don't they have more checkers? My God, it's Labor Day weekend. You'd think they would have some brains. And they look at me and they're like, what are you so happy about? And I always just say, if this is the biggest thing I have to worry about in my day, I'm doing okay. The Wu-Wei warrior, instead of saying, why me? They say, what can I do with this space? Another experiment. Plans get canceled. Schedules shift. Tech breaks down. Most of us respond with frustration. This damn computer. The Wu-Wei warrior says, just go for a walk. The computer's not working anyway. Me standing here waiting for it is not going to do anything. What if I take 5 minutes and go outside and breathe? What can I do with this space that has been given to me as a gift? How about the overwhelm drill? When your tasks pile up, your stress builds, you have too much to do in too little time. The normal reaction is to double down, grind harder, work later, force solutions. The Wu-Wei warrior steps back, looks for the natural order of things, and works with that order instead of against it. Don't force 10 things at once. Find the one thing that needs to be done first. Do that. Take a step back and find the next thing. Those things will tell you which one wants to be done first. They will. If you step back and just breathe for 1 second, just step back and take a breath, the thing that needs to be done first will be the first thing that pops into your head. So you notice what's happening here? The warrior's strength is not in forcing. In a culture that tells us to fight and give us more and produce, the Wu-Wei Warrior looks like a rebel. They choose ease over struggle, flow over force. Not out of weakness, but out of confidence that the way itself is moving in the way it's supposed to move, and they are moving along with it. And that's what makes this practice for me so exciting, because you can train it, just like you train muscles. Every time you soften instead of clench, every time you flow instead of push, you're building that inner strength. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside. Most people won't even know you're doing it. Nobody's handing out medals for best at staying calm in line at the grocery store. But on the inside, you're becoming resilient in a way that lasts. So here's, like we often have, Taoism gives us an invitation. We think of warriors as people who win battles, right? The Wu-Wei Warrior wins in a different way. They win by not needing to fight the battle that doesn't matter. They win by conserving their energy for the battles that do matter. They win by refusing to be at war in the first place. So here's your Taoist invitation. Wear that identity for just a little while. The next time you're tempted to push, ask yourself, seriously, take a moment. Are you listening to this podcast like it's background, or are you listening because you actually want to understand what's happening? Take a moment and ask yourself, how would a Wu-Wei Warrior respond right here? Not by giving up, not by slacking off, but by leaning into the natural flow and allowing the struggle to dissolve. Because in the end, Wu-Wei isn't weakness. It's strength without strain. And that's the heart of becoming a Wu-Wei Warrior. So where does this leave us? Wu-Wei can sound abstract when you first hear it, non-doing and effortless action and all that stuff. But when you sit with it, you'll realize it's one of the most practical, down-to-earth ideas in Taoism. It's about how you drive your car, how you answer your emails, how you handle an argument, and how we roll out new technology. It's not mysterious. It's everyday life without that extra layer of struggle that we like to pile on top. That's why I love teaching this so much. Because at certain times in my life, I had forgotten about it. But when I got back to it, everything jumped right back in order. Wu-Wei is not asking you to stop acting. It's asking you to stop fighting. Life is already happening. The Tao is already moving. Wu-Wei is the art of remembering that you can't push against it, but you can float. You can put down a rudder and steer gently when needed. But you don't have to turn around and paddle against the current. You don't have to try to fix a relationship by sheer willpower. You don't have to push a project long after the energy's gone from your body. You know what it's like to wake up and pretend that you've got it all handled. But you're pretending, right? Wu-Wei is the opposite of that. It's what happens when you take your hand off the wheel for just a second and breathe and realize, 1 second, the road's still there. You're still going to go straight. You're fine. That's what I love about Taoism. It doesn't present this idea with wagging a finger at you and telling you you're wrong. Shame on you for forcing. It just chuckles and says, of course you tried to force it. That's what human beings do. We're human beings. We try to force stuff. That's what we do. But look, there's another way. Taoism has this sly humor to it, this gentle reminder that the world works better when we stop trying to control it. And that's the spirit I think we need to end on here. Wu-Wei isn't about retreating from life. It's about dancing with it. It's about finding that rhythm where things feel lighter and smoother and more alive. It's about remembering that nature doesn't grind or hustle or micromanage, and yet everything gets done. The grass grows, the rivers flow, the seasons turn, the sun rises, all naturally. So try it. Not in some big dramatic way, but in small experiments like we talked about earlier. Let a conversation breathe. Let a problem rest overnight. Let your body tell you when it's time to stop. For God's sake, stop for 5 damn minutes. Ask yourself once in a while, am I forcing this? Or is it flowing? And if the answer is forcing, see what happens when you step back. The irony is Wu-Wei often gets you further than force ever could. When you stop thrashing, when you stop paddling upstream, you actually move faster. Shocking, isn't it? So Wu-Wei isn't just the art of not forcing. Maybe it's the art of remembering that life has its own current, and that current can be trusted. So that's your invitation. Float. Float on, my friend. Force less, float more. I should put that on a t-shirt. That's going to wrap up episode 6 today of The Modern Taoist. Look, I got it right. I had to think about it for a second, but I got it right. You can find us at daoananda.org. That's DAOANANDA.org. You can find us at .com, I think. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We're having an issue, apparently, but we'll get that fixed. You can also find us on all the socials. Please like, subscribe. You would make our day. It's very happy. We never ask for money for being a teacher of this kind of wisdom. That's ridiculous. If a Taoist teacher asks you for money, I would question their motives. We are hoping to build a Taoist retreat in Costa Rica in a few years. And you can support that, if you like, by buying one of our cool t-shirts on our website, daoananda.org. And I thank you for listening to The Modern Taoist.
Thanks for listening to The Modern Taoist with Kit Man. Visit us online at daoananda.com or find us on all the socials. Please like or subscribe on this platform, and thanks again.